Welcome csc200 database class. For EX4, you're going to be signing into Cloud9, and you're going to be opening up your csc200 workspace. And when your workspace finally opens, you're going to see something in there. I will have already copied an EX4 folder in there for you. You don't need a bash window open just yet, so you could close that if you have anything open. You don't need it open. There's an EX4 folder here, and there's two files in there. There's an index.html and there's an index.php, and they're exactly the same except one has .php and one has .html. And the difference is that the PHP will be read by a PHP web server, by an Apache web server. So you need that extension on there to be read. And just to show you for a second, I'll double click on this, and this is a regular HTML file, and there's some PHP code in here. And PHP code is read with this kind of bracket and this question mark, and it ends with the question mark and the bracket. And it's not really color coded correctly right now. And if we actually view this, if we went to preview and we said live preview and it opens here, it'll just kind of look like that. It won't show anything that's in the PHP. And if I want to open this up here, I can see it's just running the regular HTML text. That's all it's doing right now. So I'll close that up. And I'll close this up. And that's the one that has the index.html. And I'll even close that up. And eventually we're going to get rid of this because we're going to only use this because we don't want to be confused. But if I open this one up, you could see the color coding is a little bit different. It's reading the PHP right here. Even though I still have doc type HTML, I have HTML tags in here, because I have PHP code in here, it's actually reading it because it's a PHP file. So PHP files can read both HTML and PHP. PHP is a programming language we're going to use to communicate with our databases. So if you're wondering where this is going with our databases, we're going to use this to communicate and connect to our databases and actually retrieve information, display information, all kinds of powerful things we'll be able to use with PHP with our MySQL databases. Now if I want to open this up, it doesn't really give you a preview. It says preview running application. It doesn't really give you a live preview. And what you do with PHP files, because we're actually running a PHP environment, is we actually run project. So I'm going to run the project, and it's going to start our web server. And our web server is what's used to kind of interpret this PHP code. It's server-side code, so it can only be read on a web server. If you just kind of worked on a text editor and did PHP code, you wouldn't really be able to see the result. It has to be running on a web server, either something virtual or something on the web, kind of what we're doing. This is kind of virtual on the web by using our Cloud9. Now when you do that, just like when we have our database, you're going to have a link down here. So I'm going to click down here and click on this link and hit open. And I'm going to click on EX4 because it's looking for an index page, but there's no index page in our workspace, so it's showing kind of a directory here. So I'll click on here, and it's saying this is just regular HTML text in index.html. Now I put that in there because it's still reading the index.html because that's the default in the folder. If I go back here, since there's two index files, one called .html and one called .php, it actually defaults to this one. So if I go here and I go up in the address bar and I type in index.php, now it'll actually show the PHP file, and it'll show you the PHP code that's generated in there. So that means it's working. It's working on the web server. Otherwise it wouldn't. If there wasn't a web server running, it wouldn't be able to see this code. I did have to kind of put that full file there so it got to the PHP file. So we're going to get rid of the index.html and just keep the PHP. So I'm going to close this up, and then I'm going to go over to the index.html, and I'm just going to right click and I'm just going to delete it. I don't even need that. It says, do you want to remove it? And I'll hit yes. So we'll just have the index.php for now. Now what we want to do next is connect to our web server and make sure that we're connecting to our web server and that we can connect to our database server. And remember, our database is where we were using phpMyAdmin to actually run. We had a world database, we had pirates, pictures, and different stuff like that. And just so we know what we're connecting to, I'm just going to go there quick. So I'm going to go to Window and do New Terminal. And here's a terminal down here right now. And I'm just going to type in PHP the way we connected when we were using phpMyAdmin, myadmin-control ctl, and then install and I'll hit return, and then it does your installation, or it makes sure that it's installed. And the important thing is you get this link down here. So I'm going to click on this link, and I'll just say open, so it opens in a tab. And this goes to my PHP-my-admin, and I'll just put in my username in here, which I think is just Richard Homa, the same one you're using, and you don't need a password. And this is the one where we had Pirates 1982, Pirates 1982 pictures, and also the world database that's in there. And one thing I want to point out, because we don't have to do anything with our database yet, but I do want to point out that the server is 127.0.0.1. That's the number, the IP address of the server. You could also use localhost. You might see the word localhost there. And we could try either one. Now what we're going to do is we're going to connect to this. Now, how are we going to connect to that? Well, we're going to use PHP, but we have to know how to connect to it. And right now we don't. So we're going to go to W3 Schools. So I'm going to go to PHP, not SQL. We're going to go to PHP. There's a lot of stuff for PHP, and we'll get familiar with going through it. But the first place we're going to go is we're going to go down to mysql database, because that's what we're connecting to with PHP. And we're just going to go to the one that says connect. And you're going to see PHP connect to MySQL. You're going to see, should I use MySQLi or PDO? We're going to use MySQLi, which means improved. And you could read some of this stuff here just to see what it's talking about. And we're going to scroll down. And there's two connections here. One says object-oriented. And if we scroll down, one says procedural. We're going to use this one right now just to start. And we're going to edit this a little bit. We're not going to use it exactly as it is. But you can see this one says localhost. And we could use either localhost or we could use the IP address. But I'm going to copy this whole group of code. I'm going to copy it. And I'll do a Control-C or Command-C. And I'll go back to here. And I'll go into this file. I'll make this a little smaller here. And where I'm going to put this is I could either put this at the very beginning. I could even put it after here if I want. I'm going to put it kind of in between our HTML, where our HTML starts. So I'm going to put it there. What you'll see, since this is your PHP file, you'll see some color coding which is different than your HTML. And you'll see some things called server name, username, password. These are variables. And variables in PHP use the $ in the beginning. And so you have to have them. So that's what they indicate a variable. Just like in JavaScript, you might see the keyword var, but for here, they use a $ in PHP. So, and this is called $ server name, username, password. They're fine. We could use those same ones. They have localhost here, just so we're consistent in the beginning. Maybe I'll just change that, and I'll do the 127.0.0.1. We'll try that out, make sure that connects. If not, try localhost. But since we just saw in our PHP-my-admin that our server name is that, let's stick with that for now. And our username is not username. Our username is the one you're using, the one you connect to when you get to PHP-my-admin. The one I just used, the one called Richard Homa, because that's the name of that's my username here. So it's Richard Homa. And then your password is nothing, because remember, you don't need a password, so you could just leave that blank. So we're going to have this kind of blank, this empty string right now to connect. And these are variables. So server name represents this number. Username represents me, or my name, or your username. And the password represents just the empty string right now. Now this is basically a connection function that it's using right now called mysqli connect. And this is a variable that represents that. So we could basically say if, so we could use this connection for other things. So we're just setting up a variable that represents this function. And this function is basically kind of connecting to our server name, and it's also connecting through our username and also using our password. We can even use database in there, but for right now, we're just going to make sure we connect to the server. Now, what's set up here initially? So that's our original kind of connection here. And they use two ends. Sometimes you'll see it with one end. And again, these things with $ are variables. So in this check connection here, I'm going to change this right now. And because they have kind of just an if, and they don't really have anything else after it. They just kind of have if, and they have connected. What I'm going to do is set up a true if-else statement. So I'm going to say if. I'm going to change what they have here. And what they have here is fine, but I want you to understand how this works. I'm just going to start off and say if. And basically just having that variable in there means it's true. You could put equals true, but I'm just going to say if connection. That means it's true. And instead of die, since we don't really know what that means yet, but obviously it shows an error message and things like that, we're going to just put something here and say if that connection is working, we're going to say echo, and echo means basically printed to a page. And what you'll do with echo is you'll put a string after it, and we're going to say connected successfully, kind of what it's doing down here, but we're just going to kind of do the successful part first and then have a kind of an else if it doesn't work. So I'm going to say connected successfully to, and I'll say server, and then what I'll do is I'll put a space in here, and then I'm going to do a dot space, and I'm going to say server name, and then I'm going to put a semicolon. And this is kind of like in JavaScript when we use a plus. This little dot connects a string, which is just text, to a variable. And that's why we're even putting a little space here. So it says connected to server, then there's a space, and it'll say our server name, which at this point should be 127.0.0.1. And that means if we connect OK, it should say this. It should display this on the page. So if it does not connect, we're going to put something here that said did not connect to server. We'll just do something like that for now, or something. And we'll change that, but we just want to make sure that we have our if-else statement correct. Now, we don't really have it set up. Right now we have an if, and that's basically what happens if it works. What we're going to do next is we're going to do an else. And we're going to put an open and closing bracket. And this will basically contain what happens if you don't connect. So it's going to say did not connect or connection error, whatever you want to put here for now. I'll just put connection error, and it's showing up because I don't have quotes around it as a string. So we're going to say echo connection error if it does not connect. So if it connects, that means that $ connection, that means this connection, if that worked and went through, it's going to say this, and it should show the server name or the server number, and if not, it should show this. So we're going to see what happens here. Now we might want to try it both ways. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put a 2 here and just put it the wrong way first and see what happens. But I'm also going to do file save, so it's saved. And then what I'm also going to do is I have to run it. So I'm going to have to run project right now. And what that means is it's down here, you're going to get a link to see it. It won't just preview like an HTML page does. You're going to have to go down here, and if you click down here, if you're not seeing your link finger, just click down here and then click on this and just say open, and you will still have to go in this folder, and it says this is just regular, this PHP text is generated. We are seeing connection error. It's actually right here, but it's getting jumbled together with all this stuff. So we are seeing connection error, and actually if you wanted to see that a little better, we could probably put like a like a paragraph symbol in front of it. You can put HTML inside these string quotes. So if I did a file save and I just updated that, I went to here and I just refreshed that page, it should bump connection error. So that's what we're seeing, connection error. So we're still seeing this other text here that's naturally in the page, but we're not seeing our connection. So let's go back and try and fix that, or I'll put a 1 back and get rid of the 2 and see what happens now. Hopefully it should display this line, connected successfully to server, and we shouldn't see that other stuff at the top, so it wouldn't matter, although we could still just put a paragraph tag on here, which should kind of put space above it. So let me save that again, and I'll go here and just refresh it, and now it got rid of that kind of error text that was up there, and now it's showing connected successfully to our server 127.0.0.1. And if you even want to try it out, just see if localhost work. Because if localhost works, we'll stick with that too. I'll put localhost, and you just have to change it there because we have this is just the variable name. So I'll do a file save, and it says localhost. So that's working, and it seems to be connecting, or else it wouldn't say connected successfully. So we're doing okay. So you could use localhost, or you could use the number, whatever you prefer. And what we're going to do next is actually connect to our database. Now that's going to be a little more work, but this is our first kind of checking here, and we're going to change this because there's different ways. Even the one we got from here, it actually shows a server error, and it gives you the error message. So this one's actually more useful, but I wanted to make sure that we knew how to set up an if-else statement first, and that's what we did here with our code. We set up an if the connection works, then you echo or basically output this string plus the variable, or not, then we just kind of output that string which just said connection error. And there were some other error codes which showed up at the top. So that's what we're doing first. We're setting up variables for our connection, and we're just creating a connection. So that's a real simple thing to start, and that runs also in addition to the HTML that's going here. And this stuff isn't really working, so I'm going to get rid of this right now. But we are going to put PHP code in here, but I'm just going to delete this right now because this isn't really doing anything right now, other than it is being interpreted by the web server. But I'll just get rid of that because we are going to put PHP here. And this we don't really need, but we could change this later. So let's take a break here, and we're going to continue with actually connecting to our database next. So make sure that you've saved this as your first part of EX4, and we'll continue by connecting to our database. We'll just connect to our world database and just make sure we can do that with PHP.